This is Law of Attraction Explored. I'm Tim Grimes. If you'd like a free guide that explains the hidden link between relaxation and the Law of Attraction, or if you want more information about my books or my coaching, you can visit radicalcounselor.com. Enjoy the episode. One thing we really haven't spoken about that much directly is self-confidence. And self-confidence is something that I go into some detail about in the Law of Attraction Simplified, and I think it's a core component to the Law of Attraction and applying the Law of Attraction. I don't think there's any way around that. I feel like self-confidence, having confidence in yourself, is just essential. And it's something, unfortunately, that is not discussed as much as it could be when it comes to some of these better Law of Attraction teachings. It's often not there as much as it could be. That said, there are plenty of teachers who discuss it very well. First and foremost, I would say Coué, who basically just says that confidence is the key that makes everything work. And I mentioned this here because I just wanted to, because I haven't really explicitly mentioned self-confidence yet. And it's such an important part of everything we're talking about. And I also want to talk about it in relation to last episode, how I was talking about being confident in yourself and being confident knowing that you don't have to have a so-called mission or any of that other baloney as far as I'm concerned. And having confidence really in yourself is the same as having confidence in faith in God. It's the same thing. It's almost synonymous. And so even though we haven't directly spoken about self-confidence much in this podcast, I would say that so many of these episodes have been indirectly or been pointing to this self-confidence that we not only should possess, but pretty much must possess in order to get these principles and habits to work better for us. And so I thought today we could turn back to H. Emily Cady, one of my favorite Law of Attraction teachers, obviously. And she has a wonderful essay, which is also none of her stuff, quite frankly, is that well known. But this essay is not well known at all. It's called Definition of Terms, Chemicalization, Personality, and Individuality. And this is included as part of the complete works of H. Emily Cady that Unity House put out a number of years ago. Just a wonderful collection of Cady's writings. But this essay is fascinating. You know, we've spoken a lot about how not to get too hooked on terms. And one reason that this essay probably is not that prominent is because she uses terms that are easily outdated or that are easily misunderstood, two of which are personality and individuality. And Cady writes, the words personality and individuality present distinct meanings to the trained mind, but to the untrained mind, they are often used interchangeably and apart from their real meanings. Personality applies to the human part of you, the person, the external. It belongs to the region governed by the intellect. Your personality may be agreeable or disagreeable to others. When you say that you dislike anyone, you mean that you dislike his personality, that exterior something that presents itself from the outside. It is the outer changeable man, in contradistinction to the inner or real man. I think that we all understand what she means when she says personality here. We're all familiar enough to get what she's getting at. And then she compares this with what individuality means to her, that term. She writes, individuality is the term used to denote the real man. The more God comes into visibility through a person, the more individualized he becomes. By this, I do not mean that one's individuality is greater when one is more religious. Remember, God is wisdom, intelligence, love, power. The more pronounced the manner in which any one of these qualities, or all of them, come forth into visibility through a man, the greater his individuality. Emerson was a man of large individuality, but retiring personality. He was grandly simple. He was of a shrinking, retiring nature, or personality, but just in proportion as the human side of him was willing to retire and be thought little of, did the immortal, the God in him, shine forth in greater degree. She goes on to write a little bit later in the essay, one's individuality is that part of one that never changes its identity. It is the God self. One's personality may become like that of others with whom one associates. Individuality never changes. Do not confound the terms. One may have an aggressive, pronounced personality, or external man, which will, for a time, fight its way through obstacles and gain its point. But a pronounced individuality never battles. It is never puffed up. It is never governed by likes and dislikes, and never causes them in others. It is God come forth in greater degree through a man. And all mere personality instinctively bends the knee before it in recognition of its superiority. We cultivate individuality by listening to the still small voice deep down within us and boldly following it, even if it does make us different from others, as it surely will. We cultivate personality in which live pride, fear of criticism, and all manner of selfishness by listening to the voices outside ourselves and by being governed by selfish motives, instead of by the highest within us. Seek always to cultivate or to bring into visibility individuality, not personality. In proportion as one increases, the other must decrease. So this is really interesting what she's talking about. And on a practical psychological level, I think that you are probably grasping what Katie is writing and talking about. I've just seen this so often in my own life when you're interacting with people. And, strong personalities are not really interesting to me anymore, at least, What's interesting is individuality, as Katie calls it here. Not a term I would use usually, but that's what she calls it. And she's saying that individuality is God within us and God made visible within us. Very, very powerful. And in this essay, she goes on to write that in life, if you're a spiritual person, if you're someone who is focused more on your individuality as opposed to your personality, as she terms it, then you might run up against or meet, people who have very strong personalities, and they basically try to have their way perhaps with you, psychologically, emotionally. And they might be very demanding, and they might scare you, and they might worry you, and they might bully you, essentially. And she says, don't let that bother you, because you are God manifest. And as she wrote, it is God come forth in greater degree through a man. And all mere personality instinctively bends the knee before it in recognition of its superiority. She writes further on in this essay, if you want to know how to avoid being overcome and thrown off your feet by the strong personality of others, I will tell you. Always remember that personality is of the human and individuality is of God. Silently affirm your own individuality, your oneness with God, and your superiority to personality. Can God fear any person? And the answer is, of course not. She writes, the more you learn to act from the still, small voice within you, the stronger and more pronounced will be individuality in you. If you are inclined to wilt before strong personalities, always remember that God has need of you, through whom, in some special manner, to manifest himself, some manner for which he cannot use any other organ. What need have you to quail before any person, no matter how important? However humble your place in life, however unknown to the world you may be, however small your capabilities may seem at present to you, you are just as much a necessity to God in his efforts to get himself into visibility as is the most brilliant intellect, the most thoroughly cultured person in the world. Remember this always, and act from the highest within you. So I think that connects pretty clearly with what we've been discussing a lot, and I hope that was helpful.